our first speaker is June Lin, who is a policy fellow at PAPA headquarters. And so her presentation is going to be on the post-sunflower era, and she's also going to give some updates on.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's give a round of applause to June.
Thank you, JC, and everyone for inviting me. But JC told me that most of the audience here today can understand both Mandarin and English. Is that right? So, because I have a lot to update to you guys, so I thought that I would present in Mandarin, but using an English PowerPoint. Would that be okay for everyone? Okay. 所以因为我自己是318的参与者，所以今天来这边就是想跟大家分享一下，就是318在太阳花学运结束之后，我们今年已经要318的第3周年了嘛。那这3年之内，台湾的公民社会跟台湾的政治的状况到底有没有什么样的改变？那就是先跟大家讲一下，就是大家我想应该也听过很多318的如何改变台湾的这样子很正面的话。那今天我要讲的话不会太正面，就是我会跟大家进行一个回头来检视说我们318。哦，Okay, so as a participant in the sunflower movement, I would like to share with you guys today that how has sunflower movement changed Taiwan's society and politics. So this is what I did after the sunflower movement. I graduated from my bachelor's degree, and I founded a social group with some of the sunflower participants and activists when we were occupying the legislative yuan. So we founded a group called Democracy 到底, 民主到底. Yeah, and so after that, also I entered Ke campaign group. So I was under Taiwan Association for Strategic Simulation, which is founded by Zhang Rongfeng. He was 国安会秘书长 during Li Denghui's time. So we were in Kepi's campaign for forming the strategy for him. And after that, I entered Li Denghui's foundation to work as a researcher. And also in 2016, after the election, I became the congressional aide of Su Zhifen 委员, which is a legislator in Yunlin. And then I come to DC and work as a policy fellow in FAPA. So these are the protest and other activity that I experienced for the past 3 years, but we can talk about that later. So this graph shows what I really care about. My ultimate goal and vision is to normalize Taiwan as a country, and also I think that's also really important for the independence of Taiwan. And in order to do that, I think these are the 4 important elements. One is the youth, in the domestic side, one is youth rights, which is how can the youth and young generation of Taiwan really participate in politics. And also on the economic side, which is distributive justice. And on the international level, what I think important is Taiwan's international relations, and also to normalize the cross-strait relation. We want to interact with China as country to country. So during the presentation today, I'll break my talk into 3 parts. The first part is where are all the activists that participate in sunflower movement are right now? What are they doing right now? So in that part, I will examine the development of the civil society and all the social movement after sunflower movement. The second part would be what happens and what's the progress of the service trade agreement right now, Fumao. As you all know, Fumao is still stuck in legislative yuan, and what's happening right now and what should we do next? And the third part is I think is the most important part of the talk today, is has sunflower movement changed Taiwan's politics? And if it did, what was the change? And what should we think about next? So the first part is, where are all the activists right now? So if you look at this graph, do everybody recognize all of the group here? Oh, at least some of them?
Yes.
Like which one?
台左维新。
台左维新、激进侧翼. And you should recognize this one because I just introduced that. Yeah. 岛国前进. And this one? Do everybody remember this one? That is from 洪仲丘事件. Yeah, 1985行动联盟, and also like 福尔摩沙会社、革命议会、黑岛青、小蜜蜂、建民解放区. These are all the groups that actually involved in sunflower movement, or they emerged after sunflower movement. But some of them still exist, and some of them are still doing something, but a lot of them actually has disappeared. So what has those civic group done after sunflower movement? So that's me here and Kopi. So some of the groups and some of the young generation actually entered to the political system and tried to change the Taiwan's politics through campaigns and through getting involved in the politics. So that's me here. And also one of the member of 民主到顶 actually formed 监票部队. Has everyone heard of that before? 监票部队 is the volunteer group that that students form for Kopi's election. They actually voluntarily formed a group of, I think, about 2,000 people and try to monitor the poll. So I think that's an important step for changing the election culture of Taiwan, because back in the day, I believe everybody heard of the story of Kuomintang changing the poll, like when the line turns off and line turns up, and then the poll got changed by Kuomintang. So all kinds of stuff like that. So I think that's one of the important steps that actually civil society can change the election culture. Okay. And also, what I mentioned, Wang Yikai, he formed a group called 革命议会, and what he did was, during the campaign, people usually try to help the electorate, but what he tried to do is he tried to interfere Kuomintang's election and trying to get all the candidates of Kuomintang for not getting vote for. Yeah. And also groups like 歌兰委, has everybody heard of that? 歌兰委tried to amend the bill of the impeachment, and also like 岛国前进, they tried to make amendment to referendum bills, but actually they didn't make it, but that's still an important step for Taiwan society. So there are also a lot of protests that's related to cross-strait relations, like AIIB 亚投行. Like this is the first time that I got arrested by police. So also about 马习会, which just took place during the last few months of Ma Ying-jeou's presidency. So actually, 民主斗争 and 台左维新, we formed a group of 4 activists. They bought their own airplane tickets to fly to Singapore to protest the Ma Xi meeting. So I believe some of you heard of the story of why we decided to occupy Legislative Yuan, which is actually an accident. They actually, when they were protesting for Zhang Jingzhong's 32nd passing the bill, they just gathered outside of Legislative Yuan, and they didn't plan to really go inside and occupy the Legislative Yuan, so it was actually an accident. But actually, sunflower movement or the protest against service trade agreement actually has been going on for years before sunflower movement. So why is that there are so many important social movements emerged before sunflower movement? For example, in 2013, 反媒体垄断, and 2014, 红中秋, there are many big social movements since 2012. So why is that? And so I put up 3 main reasons that I think that caused all the social movement this year. The first one is the awakening from the illusion of the prosperity of the economy can solve everything. I believe that a lot of people heard of the saying of 只要救经济，台湾一切就会好. As long as we solve the economic problems of Taiwan, everyone can live a happy life. And that's and one of the reasons for so many social movements is because the illusion has starting to break up. And the second reason is society's demands for social justice. And the third reason is, well, I think the most important reason is that China factor has become an internal threat. Back in the days, China factor to us, people might think that 所谓的中国因素 China factor is the external threat, it's the missiles that China's aiming at us. But actually, during these years, there's a theory from 吴建民老师, 中研院的吴建民老师. He brought up the theory that there's a group of entrepreneur and politicians formed there's a cross-strait political and entrepreneur alliance has formed, and they actually has brought up a few local agents in Taiwan. 也就是跨海峡政商集团以及他们在台湾的代理人. This sounds kind of complicated, but for instance, one of the really good example is 连爷爷你回来了. Like the family of Lian Zhan. He is one of the really important examples. It's the alliance between 国民党 and 共产党. They actually try to interfere the domestic politics in Taiwan by individuals or groups like the family of Lian Zhan. So that's one of the reasons that China factor has become an internal threat in Taiwan. And so after sunflower movement, what has the social group and all the activists, what are the difficulties and challenge that all the social groups and social movement in Taiwan faced? One of the greatest challenges is the trust issue between groups and activists. People actually participate sunflower movement for different reasons. They either are angry about 蒋庆忠 or 国民党 or the non-transparency of the decision making, or either they are protesting against agreements with China. Or some people actually are in sunflower movement because they have doubts on free trade agreements. So actually there are a lot of different reasons why people participate in sunflower movement. And so after sunflower movement, actually between groups and activists, there are certain conflicts. So one of the challenge that the social group actually faced after sunflower movement is a trust issue. And the second thing is that, how do we get our heads out of the clouds? The reason that caused sunflower movement is such a big issue, and it's actually a nationwide social issue. So after 3 years, how can we still affect people and make people understand the importance of this issue in the local area? And the third reason is the eager to duplicate sunflower movement. Actually, after sunflower movement, there are a lot of social movements trying to occupy the legislative yuan again, or trying to make another sunflower movement. So I think that's one of the challenge that we face. It's like we try to make sunflower movement happen again, but social movement actually works by, I think it's by creativity. So how can we form another big social movement after sunflower movement? And the third part is the Clausewitzian paradox of the DPP administration. This was also brought by Wu Jianming 老师 theory. So what's the theory here? So this guy, the scholar Clausewitz, he actually wrote that the political object is a goal and war is the mean of reaching it. And that means war cannot exist outside the political object. So, and you look at what Xie Changting says here. 群众运动是一个手段，一个政治运动的路线或手段 which means social movement is only the means to reach their political goal. So actually, what Wu Jianming 老师 said here is that民进党 attitudes towards social movement is to institutionalize it. So they turn social movement into a tool or means to get to their political goal. So after 民进党 wins their presidency, and we expect them to do a lot of reforms, but actually during the Chen Shui-bian's time, after Chen Shui-bian's presidency, 民进党 has turned into a really conservative party, which a lot of evolution that people expected never happens. For example, during the time, people expect them to stop 核四, to stop the nuclear planning, and also something about the labor issue, which didn't happen during at that time. So the same thing is happening now during Tsai's presidency. So people has a lot of expectation on her, but actually there's still a lot of social issue that's going on. And why is that? Is because Wu Jianming 老师 thinks that 民进党 tries to use social movement as a mean to reach their political goals. So the energy and the energy of the social movement actually disappeared after 民进党's presidency. And another one is the incorporation of the sunflower activists. Actually, a lot of the activists trying to enter the DPP or New Power Party after sunflower movement, they want to make a difference in the political arena, but how can they change the old culture of the certain parties? For example, DPP, they have a lot of fraction, 很多派系. So after they entered old party like this, how can they change the culture inside of those parties? And also the last one, a lot of young generation, in our generation, people call it 天然独. We are more pro-Taiwan naturally. We actually, most of the youth in Taiwan, they actually don't have the struggle between whether they should towards unification or towards independence, because as the time we are born, we think that we are Taiwanese. But we want to reach independence. How can we reach that? And what kind of independence do we want? Actually, after sunflower movement, people are not just yearning for independence, but they're yearning for a more left, more socialism society. So that's kind of the struggle of the new generation. We want independence, but what kind of independence do we want? So that's the first part, and the second part is what happened to the cross-strait service trade agreement right now. To talk about this, we have to introduce the group called Economic Democracy Union, which is formed by 赖中强律师. He was one of the main activists who started the protest against service trade agreement. So it's actually a platform of the NGOs that actually has participated in sunflower movement. And what they do right now is they continuing on managing the sunflower funds and all the follow-ups of the sunflower movement. And all the issues that they cared about is service trade agreements, of course, and the cargo trade agreement that actually Taiwan is negotiating with China last year, 货贸协议, and also free trade agreements like TPP, and also cross-strait capital flows, and forming a formal monitoring mechanism for future agreements with China. So, does anyone remember the 4 appeals of sunflower movement? 4大诉求，当时喊的4大诉求。第一个 the first one is 退回服贸 stop the cross-strait agreement process. And the second one is the call for establishment for a formal monitoring mechanism for future agreements with China. 两岸协议监督条例 is to form a legal framework to monitoring the future agreements with China. And the third one is to delay the cross-strait agreement examination process until the monitoring mechanism is formalized. And the fourth one is we ask for a citizen constitutional congress. So the 4 appeals has actually turned into the 5 follow-ups, which is we yearn for the economical democratization, and we hope that there will be no negotiation without civic participation and no free trade agreements without distribution justice. And the second one is we ask for a proper bill, a proper legal framework on the monitoring mechanism for future agreements with China. And the third one, of course, is to refuse the One China principle and enhance Taiwanese right of self-determination and refuse political negotiation with China. And the fourth one is to re-examine trade relation with China, no matter it is service trade agreement or cargo trade agreement. And the fifth one is the constitutional reform, which is really important for Taiwan to normalize ourselves as a country. So what is sunflower movement actually about? Actually, people join sunflower movement based on 3 main reasons. The first one, which is the basic common sense for all the participants, is the procedural justice, because we are against the non-transparent procedural justice by Kuomintang. So most of the people who joined sunflower movement cared about Zhang Qingzhong's 32nd. And so you may hear people that said that 我反黑箱，但是我不反中. I'm against the procedural injustice, but I'm not against China. So that's some people's standpoint. And the second largest common sense is the China factor we just mentioned. Some people are not against free trade agreement, but they are against free trade agreement with China because China is such a threat to us. And the smallest group of activists cared about all the free trade agreement. They are actually, some of the participants are against all kinds of free trade agreement. They cared about the damage of the globalization, the harm that globalization or free trade agreement might done to the people of Taiwan. So it's actually about 3 main different things. The first one is about procedural justice, is about the reform of our domestic politics, and about the China factor is actually about cross-strait relations and of course international relations. And the third group of people actually cared about globalization and the integration of regional economic. So that's the second part. And the third part is, has politics gotten better after sunflower movement? So after sunflower movement, we've been through 2 important elections. The first one is in 2014, which Kepi has won, the local election, and the 2016 election for legislator and president. And as you all might notice, there's a lot of new small parties that has emerged. If you read 选举公报, actually there are 18 parties that was involved in the election in 2016. And And an important result is that this was the first time of DPP that won over the legislative grant, which is a total victory of DPP. And also a lot of activists from Ye Baihe and Sunflower Movement and also Ye Caomei has actually ran for the legislature, like Fan Yun, Huang Guochang, Lin Changzhu. But however, after DPP's total victory and Tsai Ing-wen's presidency, there are still a lot of protests going on about labor issues, about the cross-strait agreement issues, and also land justice and legalizing gay marriage, and also the issue about the land of the Aboriginals. So what we expected Tsai Ing-wen's presidency to be an evolution for our society, but there are still a lot of social issue and social injustice going on. So why is that? Has the better political climate that we yearn for years actually emerged in the post-Sunflower era? So this is one of the panel that Minzu Douzhang held after the 2016 election. So we are talking about what is the new politics that we are talking about? What are the values of the new politics? Is it 非蓝非绿, as long as they are not DPP and not KMT? Is that a symbol of evolution? Or do candidate has to embrace new values like taking, like Kirby likes to take their Kirby likes to go running and go biking with people? Or do the candidate have to be really good with internet in order to communicate with the new generations? Or do they have to abandon old values like 跑红白场? Back in the days, the candidate has to go to the wedding or the funerals in the local area in order to build connection with people. So if we want to embrace the new value of politics, do we have to abandon those kind of rituals? Or as long as they're a participant from Sunflower Movement, do they represent the new value of Taiwan's politics? So what should a better politic look like? So I brought up a few points. And the first one, I think one of the important thing is that young generation participating in politics system is to try to let the young generation can participate in the politics system easier. But what are the challenges that we faced? One of the challenges is the puzzles of the incorporation of the old parties, like what I just mentioned. A lot of my friends trying to enter DPP because they want to make difference in the political system, but how can they face the old culture from DPP? And the second part is, I think there should be more participation from the citizen. So a lot of groups like Jilin V and Wuocao has actually tried to make that happen. They have live video in the Congress, so everyone can see what's happening in the legislative yuan right now, as long as you're on the internet. And also Jilin V has conducted a lot of projects, try to bring up the open data value and try to make our government more transparent and open to the civic society. And the third point is that I think in order to have a more progressive politics, we should encourage multiple party politics, 多元政党政治. So we have to let all the small parties who embrace different values like NPP, like 绿色盟, like 树党, those kind of small parties with different and progressive value should be able to survive in Taiwan. But they face the struggle between ideal and reality is that in the local level, how do you get people to vote for an idealist or your ideal? So that came to the reform of the local politics. I think in order to make a difference in Taiwan's politics, one of the basic things that we should do is to change the local politics. For example, last year in 新店区, 新北市的新店区, do anyone knows who got elected? It was 罗明才, 罗福柱的儿子, which is a big gangster in Taiwan. So there's still a lot of injustice and nepotism happening in the local politics, and in order to really change the political climate in Taiwan, I think one of the basic things that we should do is that we should start from the bottom up. We should start from the local level to change the climate of local politics. And also, what we just mentioned, after Minjindang's total victory, we should face that we are not only talking about the struggle between pro-Taiwan or pro-China, but we are also struggling with a pro-progressive value or pro-conservative value. So I think when we are choosing the candidate or choosing a party that we vote for, rather than just thinking of pro-independence or pro-unification, another important thing is that are we facing a more progressive society or a more conservative one? So what are the values of conservative and progressive? I think those forms brought by Professor Xu Sijian is a really good example. He claims that in international politics level, the more conservative one is the reinforcement of the strong powers and nationalism. But the more progressive one is about solidarity, meeting social needs, and enhance the social bond, even as a cross-country one. And on the economic side, I think a more conservative party would be more capital dependent. It's about transnational exploitation or dependence on the strong power. Like Ma Ying-jeou's time, we are always depending on the economic of China. And in a more progressive society or country, and Xu Sijian professor thinks that they should have enhanced the economic autonomy, which is emphasize on the local industry and improvement of labor rights. So back to the first form that I showed, I think in order to reach the normalization of state, we have to improve youth participation in politics and also enhance our economic autonomy and also improve Taiwan's international status and international participation. So to the young political workers in Taiwan, I think one of the important things is to sustain the energy of social movement and civic power. And the second one is to build the connection between governmental agent and extra-governmental agency, which is like NGO and all the activists. And also, one of the important things that I just mentioned is the reform of local politics. So actually, a lot of activists, which is my age, like 25 years old or 24 years old, they are actually running for the city council in 2018. And another thing is that I think it's important that we understand the impact of national central policies on local level. That is how we continue on social reforms and social issues like cross-strait agreement. And also the possibility of building a local-based party, which starts from solving the problems and social issues on the local level, then enter the central policy. So these are a few organizations that some of the activists are forming right now. Like I just mentioned, they try to start from a local level. They build a local association and trying to communicate with the community and try to solve the community's issue. And start from that, they are trying to run for city council and then enter the central policy side. And also, Jingminlian, what I just mentioned, they are still fighting for the cross-strait agreement issue, which has already been 3 years, but we hasn't had a legal framework on monitoring system yet. So that's about sunflower movement and about as a Taiwanese American, what should we do in the Trump's era? So as you all know, after the Trump Tide call, actually a lot of media thinks that what Trump did is a really reckless move for him to make China really angry. But is the breaking rituals a reckless move or a breakthrough since Obama's pivot to China? So I think that's a question that we could think about. And also another important thing is that Rex Tillerson actually reaffirmed six assurance during the hearing, and also during the hearing from Senate. So I think that's one of the important breakthrough, because that's I think it's the first time that Secretary of State actually mentioned six assurance in the hearing. And also after Trump's high call, another disappointing thing is Trump Xi's call. But Trump used the word honor here. He didn't say he would accept one China policy, and he didn't say he would acknowledge one China policy. He actually used the word honor. So how would he honor one China policy? I think that's an interesting thing that we can follow up. And another thing is that has Taiwan become a non-bipartisan issue? Taiwan has always, as what Kuhn always said, is that Taiwan is always a bipartisan issue in the USA, because Taiwan has a vibrant democracy, and then we embrace the value of freedom and democracy. So no matter Republicans or Democrats, they always support Taiwan because of the free value that Taiwan embraces. But after Trump's presidency, are we still a bipartisan issue for them, or are we caught between the wrestling of Republicans and Democrats? I think that's one of the issues that we should be looking about. And also, what's the relation of China, Taiwan, and U.S. after Trump's presidency? I think we are always stuck between these two big empires. And so what's China's agenda next? Actually, after Tsai's presidency, because Tsai wouldn't accept 九二共识, 92 consensus, so what Beijing did is that they cut off the tourism to Taiwan. But actually, looking at the other figures of other economic relation with China, actually the only sanction that China put on Taiwan is the tourism. They hadn't cut off trade with Taiwan yet. So what would Beijing do next? What is the agenda of Beijing next? Actually, in 2017, they are having their 19th Congress meeting, which is 19大全国代表大会, which is the meeting that Xi Jinping has to deal with the internal high-level leadership in China. So actually, most of the scholars are waiting for that to happen, because that's when the time Xi Jinping has to deal with the internal problem of China. And after that, there might be a new, different policy on Taiwan. And also, has the relation between KMT and PRC changed? As we always said, during the Ma Ying-jeou's time, it was the third time of 国共合作, which PRC and KMT actually had a really good relations, just as we mentioned, like through 连战家族. But as you all know, in the 228 this year, what did PRC do? They tried to commemorate 228 event with us. So actually, by doing that, they're actually bashing KMT, because 228 is what KMT did back in the days. So has the relation between KMT and PRC changed? And will PRC build a new relation with DPP during Taiwan's presidency? Actually, an important scholar in China called Zhou Zhihuai, he mentioned last time that we can accept that Taiwan doesn't mention 92 consensus as long as she can build a new framework unless she can build a new relation with PRC under the framework of One China principle. So how would PRC build their relation with DPP? I think that's a really interesting thing. And also, as we just mentioned, after 19大, will Beijing start a new sanction on Tsai's administration? And what would Trump administration do to the China-US relation? I think that's one of the important questions. And as we are facing the Trump's presidency, we are facing a TPP without US, and also the possibility of building a free trade agreement between Taiwan and the US. So, is there an internet here?
I can set it up.
Okay, so there's a really interesting thing. Does everyone know the Uber thing that's happening in Taiwan? Uber left Taiwan, right? Because they didn't follow our rules. They actually break the law and didn't pay the fees for their industry. But actually during the meeting with State Department actually said to Kun and Charong said that we are not happy with the Uber thing happening in Taiwan, because they think that all the regulations in Taiwan cannot fit the regulations in the US. So in order to build a closer economic relationship with Taiwan, they actually hope that Taiwan could amend all the laws and all the regulations on certain industry, for example, Uber and the taxi. So what we're facing right now, actually, the difficulties to build a free trade agreement with the U.S. is actually not the tariff barrier. It's actually about the regulations. So how could Tsai Ing-wen and Tsai's administration amend our regulations on economic side in order to fit the need of the U.S.? That's a really important question. And also, would Tsai's new southbound policy work? And as you'll know, there's a really interesting thing that actually happened right now. Few weeks ago, some of the legislators, including Guan Biling, visited India, and which was welcomed by the Congress of India. Of course, and China was really angry about that. So China actually threatened India that they shouldn't do that. But the reaction of India is quite interesting. Instead of apologizing, they actually said that we think there's no big deal of accepting Taiwan's legislator. So there's an interesting thing about the Southeast countries' relations with China. So some scholars says that the reason that India plays a Taiwan card in that incident is because they actually have strategical conflict with China. So how could Taiwan use those kind of conflict between the Southeast Asia country and China, and how can we use that as a strategic policy to change our relation with the ASEAN country or the Southeast Asia country? That's a really important thing. And also, in the wave of globalization, how can we survive? So I think one of the important things that I learned in DC that is we all have our different role. Like for example, TECRO is trying to build the free trade agreement, build a free trade agreement between Taiwan and the U.S. So they have to keep close to State Department, and So there are a lot of more aggressive, more pro-Taiwan thing that they couldn't do. So that's when FAPA can, for example, what we're doing right now is to bring up Taiwan Travel Act. And also, as a media, as citizen, we all have different roles that we can participate in politics. And also, I think another important thing is that to let the world know Taiwan under the context of Taiwan, but not through Trump or not through China. So, yeah, so that's, what time is it right now?
44.
44. Okay, so I'll end this presentation and start with the FAPA headquarter update. So I'll start with what we did in 2017 to now. So the latest news is that we posted an article in Taipei Times is to gain Taiwan's participation in World Health Assembly. And the second one is thanks to the members here. We had 3 proclamations from 3 different cities for asking the mayor to set up Taiwan Peace Day on 228. And also for the name ratification part, we had Global Foundries change province of China into Taiwan in February 13th. And also the most important goal that we're trying to push right now is the Taiwan Travel Act. I brought a few petition forms here today. So the goal of Taiwan Travel Act is to lift all restriction on high-level visit to and from Taiwan. And it was introduced in-house by Steve Shabbat in January. And so back to 2016. So we had a members reunion after the election in Taipei. And also we got 21 congratulations letter from members of Congress to Tsai Ing-wen, and also the 228 extension of remarks in congressional record. So this was the luncheon in Taipei with video clips by Rose Lang-Ting and President Tsai Ing-wen. And also last year's annual advocacy conference in DC. And we hosted a 3-day visit to Washington, D.C. by New Power Party delegation, including Huang Guochang and Xu Yongming. And also the briefing for taiwanus visit to Washington, D.C. And for the name ratification, last year it was about Costco and Delta Airlines, which is kind of a big deal. And also the Heritage Week, we gained 16 statements and proclamations from different cities. So during last year, one of the most important goals that we reached is about the 6 assurance legislation. So it was passed by both houses, which is introduced by Steve Shabbat in House and Marco Rubio in Senate. And also, what we are continuing doing is the Taiwanese checkbox in the Census 2020 form under the race question. So we sent a letter from FAPA to Census Bureau, and also the letter from all the Taiwanese American organizations. And also we posted news in Liberty Times and OPAD in Taipei Times. And of course, about the diplomatic relation with Vatican. We asked for the dual recognition from them, so we wrote letter to Pope Francis and also Vice President Chen Jianren. And also about Taiwan Travel Act, this is what we did last year, and we're continuing on doing it this year. So the issue that FAPA will work on in 2017 is to continuing on recruit the support for Taiwan Travel Act, and also the support of Census 2020. So there's also petitions about that. And also further recruit members in House and Senate in Taiwan caucus, and work on the U.S.-Taiwan Free Trade Agreement, and also continuing on Taiwan's participation in international organizations. And of course, the sales and delivery of arms to Taiwan in order to defend ourselves, and the confirmation of AIT director by the Senate. And also we seek for further affirmation of the 6 assurances and continuing on normalizing U.S.-Taiwan relations. And of course, trying to terminate the U.S. One China policy and bring the Taiwan Policy Act to the House floor for a vote, and also advancing a Taiwan policy review. And for the activities this year, we will hold our emerging leader workshop in spring, which is probably happening in the last week of June. And also we try to make the YPG conference a bigger thing, so we are making it a Taiwan Advocacy Day, which is a convention for all FAPA members to join in the end of September this year. So please continuing on follow headquarters on Facebook and also on Twitter. So we have a new Twitter account here. So that's the update for today, and thank you.
Thank you, June. Any questions? Okay. So our next speaker is Russell Shao. He's the executive.
Introduction, and for June for that very comprehensive deep dive on the local politics, as well as all the activities that FAPA is engaged in. It's a great honor for me to be here. I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Victor and Mark for the invitation to be here. What Victor many of you may know that Victor and I know each other for quite some time now, and in fact we met each other about 10 years ago when we were engaged right after undergrad, and we were participating in a leadership workshop for young Taiwanese and Americans to advocate for Taiwan. And so, and Victor, when following years grew up, now has a family and has a real job, and well, I on the other hand kind of got stuck in the past and continue to do the work that I'm doing now, which is in the think tank policy world. So I have a deep admiration for what Victor is doing, and all of you are doing, really, because you all have your jobs and you're engaged here because of your passion and your love for Taiwan. And really, if I were to analogize this, you're really the core arteries of the community, because you are here to work towards a better future for U.S.-Taiwan relations. Now, my role as a think tanker is quite different. I'm not here to tell you what things you should do. Really, I'm here as an analyst, and I'm here to tell you how things are, how to describe and explain why the things are the way they do. To hopefully, if after my brief discussion, you can walk away with just a sense that we're maybe working off the same template in terms of where we are and where perhaps, and you can determine where we need to go. And so the topic of my discussion here, I think, is quite timely. It's something that is quite not a no-brainer in terms of where we start, and that is the significance of the Trump administration's policy towards Taiwan. So there's no better way to start this than to start where it began, which is it really began with December 2nd in 2016 in the United States, when President-elect Donald Trump received a phone call from President Tsai Ing-wen of Taiwan. Now, in what was widely billed by the American mainstream media as a significant policy shift, the two world leaders spoke on the phone for a little over than 10 minutes. During the brief phone call, President Tsai congratulated the president-elect on his election victory and exchanged views about the economy and regional issues. Now, no president, US president or president-elect has reportedly taken a phone call, had face-to-face interaction with the leader of Taiwan since 1979. Nothing, however, in the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979, which legally governs the content and conduct of relations between the United States and Taiwan, or the three joint communiques between the United States and the PRC, prohibit the president-elect from receiving a congratulatory phone call from the democratically elected leader of Taiwan. Now, notwithstanding this fact, the media and the pundits sounding the alarm about how the phone call represented an earth-shattering break in US policy. Yet, nothing in the act of the president-elect, taking the phone call represents such a thing. Nothing. In the policy per se of the United States. There's nothing explicit in the United States One China policy, the United States One China policy, that prohibits the president-elect from taking a congratulatory call. So, this is more of it's nothing that's legally prescribed, but it's really much more of a norm in terms of how the executive branch carried out the policy that is prescribed by law. Now, this is reaffirmed by the former Senior Director of Asian Affairs on the National Security Council in the Obama administration. His name is Jeff Bader. He's now currently at the Brookings Institution. And he underscores this implicit and self-imposed nature of the restrictions by pointing out that there have been, in fact, non-visible written communications between the top leaders of the United States, including presidents and president-elects, and Taiwan. But it's always been understood that direct conversation would cross a line not worth challenging. So the concern is not that the two top leaders communicated, but how they communicated. This is hardly a dispute over the substance. Excuse me, I was not aware that I was going to be giving a presentation without a panel in front of me. So, after news about President-elects Trump's and Thai broke, the Obama White House correctly noted that there was no change in the United States' long-standing policy. This is an obvious statement of fact because the phone call changed nothing in terms of the content prescribed by law in informal relations between the United States and Taiwan. Of course, this has not restrained Beijing's leaders from taking the opportunity to define the United States One China policy by asserting that the One China policy is the cornerstone of the sound development of Sino-US relations, and we don't want this potential political basis to be interfered with or damaged in any way. Oh, really? That'd be great, actually. Yeah, thank you. That'd be really helpful, actually. Thank you so much for that idea. Yeah.
More this way.
What's that? Move over here this way? Okay.
Okay, good.
Is this better? Okay. Oh, this is so much better. Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel much more comfortable. Okay. So, let me take a step back, though. I want to reemphasize this. The Obama White House noted that there was no change in U.S. policy towards Taiwan. This is an obvious statement of fact because the phone call changed nothing in terms of the content prescribed by law in the informal relations between the United States and Taiwan. And nevertheless, Beijing has taken an opportunity at this point to assert its definition of what U.S. policy should be. However, in the clearest articulation of the U.S. One China policy to date, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, James Kelly, made U.S. policy explicitly clear at a congressional hearing in 2004. And I quote, "I can tell you what it is not," in reference to the One China policy. It is not the One China policy or the One China principle that Beijing suggests. And it may not be the definition that some would have in Taiwan, but it does convey a meaning of solidarity of kind among the people of both sides of the straits. That has been our policy for a very long time. However, the partisan clamors resulting from Donald Trump's 10-minute phone call with President Tsai of Taiwan raises a very troubling question about whether a long-standing consensus in American policy has been broken. June also alluded to this. This consensus is the bipartisan support for Taiwan since President Jimmy Carter severed diplomatic relations with the nation on January 1st, 1979, as a condition to normalize ties with the PRC. Now, President Carter's unilateral decision in 1978 to sever ties with Taiwan did not go unchallenged. Senator Barry Goldwater, a Republican from Arizona, along with 6 other members of the Senate, 8 members of the House of Representatives, filed a complaint in federal court challenging the constitutional authority of the president to abrogate the Mutual Defense Treaty that the United States had with Taiwan. Now, in a rapid chain of events, the case was propelled to the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, although SCOTUS had passed on the merits by dismissing the case on the basis that the issues at bar represented a non-justiciable political question, the fact that Congress took the president to court, and the Supreme Court no less, over Taiwan highlighted in no small part the unwavering support that it had in Congress among both Republicans and Democrats. Yet senior policy planners at the time thought differently and believed that Washington needed Beijing and that Taiwan's days were presumed numbered. Yet, in spite of multiple changes in administrations, U.S.-Taiwan policy has remained relatively consistent. That is because U.S. policy towards Taiwan is enshrined within the TRA, the Taiwan Relations Act, which remains a cornerstone of preserving U.S. interests with Taiwan to this day. Successive U.S. presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan, a Republican who served as the U.S. president from 81 to 89, issued the 1982 6 assurances to Taiwan. To President George Bush Sr., who sold 150 advanced fighter jets to Taiwan. To President Bill Clinton, who sailed 2 carrier battle groups towards the Taiwan Strait to deter the PLA, the People's Liberation Army's saber rattling and missile tests between 1995 and 1996. And George Bush Jr., who stated that if the island came under attack from China, the United States would do whatever it took to help Taiwan defend itself. And President Barack Obama, whose administration notified Congress of more than $14 billion in arms sales between 2010 and 2016. All of these actions were justified by force of law on policy prescribed by the Taiwan Relations Act. I would heartily consider accepting a congratulatory phone call, a major comparison of all these actions. Now, speaking before reporters hours just after the phone call between Donald Trump and President Tsai, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who previously served as the director of the State Council's Taiwan Affairs Office, blamed the Thai government for orchestrating the 10-minute exchange between the 2 world leaders. He said, and I quote, "This is just the Taiwan side engaging in a petty action, 小动作, and cannot change the one China structure already formed by the international community." He acknowledged that basically the phone call did little to change U.S. policy. The foreign minister concluded, "I believe that it won't change the long-standing the long-standing one China policy of the United States government." Yet the day after that, immediately after the foreign minister's statement, Beijing launched a formal diplomatic protest and solemn representation with Washington that rated the importance of the one China policy, urging the United States to cautiously, properly handle the Taiwan issue to avoid unnecessary disturbances to Sino-U.S. relations. The People's Daily, which is the Communist Party's official mouthpiece, was less diplomatic and printed a front-page commentary admonishing readers that Trump and his transition team ought to recognize that creating trouble for China-U.S. relations is just creating trouble for the U.S. itself. The party outright criticized the president-elect for portraying the phone call as not a big deal, and warned that if such petty tricks are allowed to go unanswered, Beijing could expect to see more of these provocations once he's in office. China Daily, which is an English publication directed by the CCP Central Propaganda Department, took a calmer tone, saying that there was no need to overinterpret the phone call, which it called a sign of President-elect's Trump team's inexperience, the lack of proper understanding of Sino-U.S. and cross-strait relations. These calibrated responses from the PRC, I think, is better understood in the context of what I was referring to earlier, Beijing's long-standing efforts to shape and define U.S. policy through political warfare. The objective here is to align U.S. policy more closely with Beijing's one China principle. Now, towards that end, Beijing utilizes diplomatic economic, and military tools of statecraft to influence Washington and also Taipei. Influence them from taking policy positions that Beijing sees as detracting from its policy. Now, an example of this false equivalency is found in the Taiwan Affairs Office's response to the phone call, which they stated, "We," meaning the PRC, "have firm will, full confidence, and sufficient ability to curb any form of Taiwan independence, and will continue to advance the progress of national unification," in this case. Now, unification is their word. In this case, Beijing appears to be attempting to characterize the phone call as a trick by Taiwanese leaders to get Washington to recognize Taiwan independence. Yet, any reasonable inference would never suggest that accepting a phone call could be considered as an indicator of such a political signal. I think what we're experiencing right now is that in this raw political environment, still reeling from the divisive presidential election, there seems to be more receptivity to Beijing's interpretation of US policy. That's the irony in all of this. Now, according to Taiwan's Ministry of Defense, there was a series of exercises that Beijing had taken by its Air Force, which flew bombers and advanced air fighters in December. Now, to the Taiwan MND, these were deliberate responses to the Trump-China phone call. Now, while Beijing's motive to intimidate Taiwan's leaders seems plausible given its past practices, if you look in terms of the missile exercises in 1995, 1996, other provocations that they have taken in terms of their aggressive and assertive behaviors both in the East China Sea and South China Sea, but why and how it expects to achieve its results are really less clear, particularly in the aftermath of the 1996 direct presidential election where the people overwhelmingly selected a candidate they did not want them to select, President Li Denghui. So, but this has just been a long-standing tactic of the PRC. It has a long history of trying to use military means to achieve political results. As I mentioned earlier, the obvious demonstration is found in the Third Taiwan Strait crisis, in which Beijing fired 3 sets of missiles over the Taiwan Strait in an effort to intimidate and coerce voters within Taiwan in the lead up to the country's first direct presidential election. However, the test had the opposite intended effect. And in the greatest show of force since the Vietnam War, the United States deployed 2 carrier strike groups towards the vicinity of the Taiwan Strait. In the transition process now, and in the short time that President Trump has been in power, there was no shortage of surprises, clearly. Trump stirred a hornet's nest when he stated on American television on December 11th that "I don't know," and I quote, "I don't know why we," meaning the United States, "have to be bound by a one China policy unless we make a deal with China having to do with other things, including trade." Now, like reactions to the president-elect's brief phone conversation with the democratically elected president of Taiwan, most, if not all, pundits' comments range from fear, disbelief, and even contempt. Some observers were shocked that Donald Trump had the audacity to question this sacrosanct, religious, one China policy. Others scornfully mocked the president-elect for waddling into destructive change of US policy that risks igniting World War III, while some expressed concern that the president-elect was using Taiwan as an bargaining chip. I think that the concerns that exist were also expressed by many in Washington. Now, I have to be clear, the one China policy is neither static, nor should anything in the president-elect's statement be conclusively read as a shift in the US one China policy in one direction or another. Not yet, at least. The prevailing misconception throws into sharp relief an increasing liability that exists within US policy. No one really knows what the one China policy is. The overwhelming reactions to the president-elect's comments refer to the one China policy as if it were some pages from the Bible. And I would like to note here, that every US president, except for Teddy Roosevelt and John Quincy Adams, swear their oath of office on the Holy Book, and even the Bible is open to interpretation. Similar and yet, the One China policy is neither law nor ever clearly defined. Now, as one former senior State Department official had noted, our U.S.-China policy has been an impressionist fabric similar to Justice Potter Stewart's view of pornography. That is, I shall not today attempt further to define the kinds of materials I understand to be embraced within that description, and perhaps I could never succeed in intelligently doing so. But I know it when I see it. So this is a topic that's almost too seemingly taboo to even touch. And the confusion is understandable because the U.S. One China policy is ambiguous at best and indecipherable at worst. And that the policy continuing to be shrouded in mystery creates dangerous myths, which makes the policy susceptible to manipulation and misapplication. I argue that the U.S. One China policy, at the very least, is due for recalibration. People tend to underemphasize the evolutionary quality of this policy and overemphasize Beijing's reaction. An important point that Asia specialist Shirley Kahn had highlighted. The U.S. policy consists of an evolution in how Washington conducts its policy, which is not bound by Beijing's dictates to other countries. However, among the partisanship that is now consuming the U.S. policy ecosystem, the current polarized political environment within the United States presents a power play opportunity that will not be lost on the PRC. Beijing will try, as it has since the 1970s, to define U.S. policy in closer alignment with its own sets of principles, the One China principle. Now, while U.S.-Taiwan policy does not exist within a vacuum, conducting policy by deference to how Beijing sees the One China is dangerous. The official U.S. position has been flexible when addressing the relationship between the PRC and Taiwan. To directly quote the Shanghai Communique of 1972, the United States declared, "The United States acknowledges that all Chinese on either side of the Taiwan Strait maintain there is but one China." As former U.S. State Department Deputy Assistant Secretary Randy Schreiber, my former boss also, and former Vice Chairman of the congressionally mandated U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, Dan Blumenthal, reminded everyone, to acknowledge does not mean the United States accepts that position. Yet, how Washington conducts its policy towards Taiwan is manipulated by a fallacy of false choices, due in part by what I've described as excessive deference to Beijing's principles. This is Beijing's discursive warfare, which rests on defining definitions, more broadening its application of the One China principle. And all this for the purpose of trying to narrowing and limiting the application of the Taiwan Relations Act and the Six Assurances. Now, there have been calls by some scholars in Washington now that seeks the need to accommodate China given its rising military capabilities, such accommodation that would necessitate the rescissions of the Six Assurances. This is a critical mistake and must be guarded against. I think the reactions to the President-elect's comments have really shown a spotlight on the increasing dangers associated with the lack of clarity of U.S. policy, especially if it's not distinguished between the PRC's policies and principles. I think, on balance, the phone call between the two world leaders in December sets the precedent for a dignified protocol between two democracies and key security partners. Since President Tsai was elected, Beijing has ratcheted up political pressure on Taiwan's international space by attempting to limit the democratically elected leaders, contact with foreign leaders, and peeling off nations, Taiwan's diplomatic allies. Now, the small African nation of Sao Tome and Principe flipped on December 20th. Nigeria announced that it was degrading its informal relations with Taiwan on January 11th, 2017. Taiwan now has 21 diplomatic allies, compared to more than 170 that recognize the People's Republic of China. President Tsai has made 2 overseas trips since becoming the head of state. Both were to Latin America. Her first overseas trip in June 2016 was to Panama. And also in her second overseas trip took her to Nicaragua, Guatemala, and Honduras. Beijing's assault on Taiwan's international space is nothing new. It represents the latest in a series of escalatory steps of PRC's enhanced pressure tactics that have included economic threats, military exercises, and a pattern of diplomatic coercion that marks a return to the old playbook that Beijing used during the previous DPP administration from 2000 and 2008. Now, Beijing's most recent efforts appear to be an attempt to bait the new Tsai government into engaging in checkbook diplomacy, now in which the two sides offered foreign aid in exchange for diplomatic recognition. Now, Beijing's desired effect will be to delegitimize the Taiwan government and lower the confidence of the US government on the ruling party's ability to maintain stable cross-strait relations. Now, if so, the Tsai administration is not taking the bait. In response to questions about the diplomatic switch, Taiwan's foreign minister, David Lee, stated that Taiwan is unwilling to play money games. After President-elect Trump broke with Old Convention and spoke with President Tsai over the phone, the international community's eyes were on Beijing to see how it would respond. It would be analytically convenient to characterize Beijing's actions simply as a response to the Trump-Tsai phone call, which Beijing continues to blame as a trick employed by the Tsai administration. This is, however, an overly simplistic assertion that really ignores PRC's long-standing Taiwan policy, the one country, two systems policy, that has remained unchanged since 1981. Indeed, Beijing was already engaging in a full-court diplomatic press on Taiwan even before Tsai gave her inaugural speech, where she laid out the basis for her cross-strait policies and pledges to maintain the status quo. There was a blitz of extraditions of Taiwan nationals to the PRC. And in each of these instances, Beijing asserted that the extradition of Taiwan nationals to China is in accordance with its own One China principle, and implied that any country with a One China policy must therefore recognize PRC sovereignty over Taiwan and its people. This is very far from the truth, and this is very far from US policy. Despite Beijing's ever-growing pressure, I believe that US-Taiwan relations are on a positive trajectory. Part of it has to do with President Tsai's low-key approach, some of it because President-elect Trump's unconventional ways. And most of it is because Beijing has this incredible ability of shooting itself in its own foot by either acting too aggressively or prematurely, or both. An example of Beijing's overzealousness is in Gambia. Although Gambia broke diplomatic ties with Taiwan in 2013, Beijing only normalized relations with the capital, Banjul, in March of 2016, before Tsai was even inaugurated and laid out her policies. This was done arguably, well, in my mind, clearly, as a diplomatic card against Taiwan and the Tsai administration. And the prospects, of course, of a return to the DPP administration at that time. Remember, the diplomatic relations were broke in 2013. That was during the Ma administration. They did not restore diplomatic relations until 2016, after the DPP had been elected and gone back into power. And even before President Tsai had given her inaugural speech. So Beijing's diplomats has this propensity to use a lot of rhetorical flourishes. And this was a clear display by the PRC Consul General of Houston when they tried to equate the phone call and meeting with President Tsai as somehow conferring de jure independence on Taiwan. And I quote, "For US leaders in the administration and legislature not to make any contact with Taiwan leaders or send any implication of support of Taiwan independence are in the interests of China, the United States, and the international community." The continued emphasis on Taiwan independence, however, also ignores Beijing's long-standing strategy of imposing its definition of one China and to subjugate Taiwan under the PRC, which I must emphasize again, is counter to the US one China policy. Now, when the PRC Council sent another letter to US lawmakers discouraging them from meeting with the leader of Taiwan, Senator Ted Cruz, a former Supreme Court law clerk and 2016 presidential candidate, sounded a defiant tone. The PRC needs to understand that in America, we make decisions about meeting with visitors for ourselves. Senator Cruz added, "This is not about the PRC. This is about the US relationship with Taiwan, an ally we are legally bound to defend. The Chinese do not give us veto power over those with whom they meet. We will continue to meet with anyone, including the Taiwanese, as we see fit." End quote. Now, after becoming the President of the United States, Trump has had a phone conversation with the PRC President Xi Jinping. This took place on February 9th, 2017. The White House readout of the call described it as lengthy. Specifically, it stated that the President Trump agreed at the request of President Xi to honor, and I emphasize here, our one China policy. So what? Clearly, this transition process had not shied away from controversy. The president-elect ignited various media firestorms that quickly spread when he questioned the one China policy. The president-elect appeared to double down on the statement when he said that everything is under negotiation. Many analysts at that time took these comments to mean that the 45th president was ready to discard the long-standing US one China policy. And collective hysteria was unleashed by the mainstream media. So I think it might be a surprise for a lot of people, even in people in Washington that I normally interact with on a regular basis, and who watch the news actually, that nothing that Trump said or did actually as president-elect actually changed US policy. The phone call between Trump and Xi is no different. The reactions to the call and the readout in particular was wide-ranging. Critics of the phone call would try to believe that the statement was wise. Others, analysts, saw the statement as capitulation. Now, reasonable people can disagree, but both these descriptions, however, miss an important point. The seemingly polarized responses throws into a clear, sharp distinction between how perceptions of Trump's policies are so removed from political reality. The fact of the matter is that the readout indicates absolutely nothing in terms of a policy change or shift in the Trump administration, because there was never a shift to begin with. The business of reading tea leaves is a messy one. Drawing inference from disparate or unrelated statements can lead to bad conclusions. With such an unconventional president that does not come from any particular political institution, the best approach is probably to infer from the man himself. As business tycoon, President Trump must be acutely aware of the nature of deal-making. As he noted in his own book, The Art of the Deal, quote, "My style of deal-making is quite simple and straightforward. I aim very high, and then I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get what I'm after." In part contributed by excessive media hyperventilation, the public became concerned that Taiwan may be used as a bargaining chip. However, the statement that Trump made about one China, I think, is better understood in the context of whether it was meant as the ceiling or the floor of such negotiations. One reasonable inference is that the one China statement represents the ceiling of negotiations, in which case it reflects the desire for Beijing to offer more concessions for Washington to maintain the status quo. On the other hand, if the statement was intended as the floor of negotiations, then the range of possibilities is much more diverse. What I'm trying to make a point here is that there are many interpretations of these statements, and how we draw these conclusions and where we think the Trump administration will go requires a lot more, I think, careful reading. I think despite no changes in policy, Beijing has taken this opportunity to double down on what it intended to do in the first place. There are reports now that Beijing may be considering amending its already ambiguous anti-succession law, which had passed in 2005, and then to broaden the applicable scenarios in which the PRC would be justified to use non-peaceful means to exact its political objective of unification with Taiwan. Now, it would be interesting to see if this actually pans out. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm so hot in here. Every time I talk about this, I get so riled up, you know, so what further action Beijing will take to retaliate for the Trump-Tsai phone call remains to be seen. But it appears from the statements and actions taken thus far that the PRC's response will be likely directed against Taiwan. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah. So intense.
With your jacket off.
Yeah, that's actually probably a good idea. Okay. I should have gone. Should have worn my my sunbathing clothes.
Not today.
Not today, right? That's true. Okay. Well, that actually feels a lot better. Where was I? So, what further action will Beijing take to retaliate for the Trump-Tsai phone call? It remains to be seen. But it appears from the statements and actions taken thus far that they're going to be directed at Taiwan. Beginning even before her inauguration in May, as I mentioned earlier, Beijing has been trying to pin the cooling relationship of cross-strait relations on the incoming Tsai administration. Yet, if Beijing continues to escalate its pressure tactics, in light of the call with President-elect Trump, it will probably only elicit more support for President Tsai, given that I believe the phone call enjoys still bipartisan support within Taiwan. If the PRC tries to further punish Taiwan through coercive means, I think it will expose their objectives, their real objective, which is to discredit the Taiwan administration. There is no secret that there's a lack of trust between the Xi Jinping, CCP, and the DPP. But doing so by further coercing and further isolating the people of Taiwan will only further alienate the people of Taiwan. It seems like Beijing has forgotten its lesson from 1995 and 1996 already. The Taiwanese people will not be pushed around. The U.S. approach to the trilateral relationship between Washington, Taipei, and Beijing requires recalibration. At the very least, it behooves this administration now to restate the long-standing U.S. One China policy as articulated by Assistant Secretary of State James Kelly, who mentioned over a decade ago, more than a decade ago, actually 1994, 2 decades ago, that the One China policy, the PRC's One China, that the PRC's One China policy, the U.S. One China policy is not what Beijing suggests. And I think the president-elect could take a page out of Beijing's playbook by drawing a line around Beijing's One China principle. I argue that a continuation of a passive approach that in effect defers to the PRC's claim will lead to a widening sovereignty gap in the Taiwan Strait and will lead to greater instability. There's wide latitude for U.S. policy to work within the existing framework. But first, it requires a clearly stated agenda of soft balancing in the Taiwan Strait. Which leads me to my conclusion, a pretty long conclusion at that. I'm not done yet. So, despite all the public outcry, nothing that President Trump has said or done while as president-elect actually changed U.S. policy, much less the law. Trump was completely within his legal rights to take a phone call and question the former administration's policies. President Obama, then President Obama, said as much when he stated, "I think all of our foreign policy should be subject to fresh eyes." So, but even if President Trump changes U.S. policy, there's nothing that legally stops him from doing so. He's the president. While much has been made about the policies in question, there has been little to no discussion about the dangerous logic behind the apparent fear over the president's questioning of policy. Lost in this polemic discourse following the president's comments is a recognition of the legal underpinning of the U.S. policies towards Taiwan, which remains ever constant in the U.S. policy itself. The reaction, even among experts, was telling, and I think laid bare a critical blind spot in the U.S. approach to cross-strait relations. To be sure, U.S. policy towards Taiwan has operated over the past 45 years on the premise that America's primary interest is in the process, as opposed to the outcome, in terms of resolving differences between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait. Now, what by design was inherently a passive policy, the emphasis on process intentionally ceded the initiative of shaping the outcome to the two other parties, Taiwan and the People's Republic of China. To be honest, it was an approach that some senior policy makers at the time would create a fait accompli. Yet, provided Washington with the flexibility to adapt and respond to broader geopolitical challenges. This was called strategic ambiguity. It is still the strategy by which the United States approaches the Taiwan Strait, which is, on the one hand, to deter the PRC from invading Taiwan with the suggestion that it would intervene in the event of an invasion. And secondly, originally, at its outset, it was to deter Taiwan, or the KMT for that matter, to invade China in order to retake the mainland. But now, that policy clearly has outlived its utility. I think despite expectations to the contrary, Taiwan thrived in the 4 decades following this announcement of the breaking of diplomatic relations. The government thrived. It liberalized from the top down while an active civil society firmly pushed for political reforms from the bottom up. Taiwan evolved from an authoritarian government to a vibrant democracy. Support for Taiwan as democracy also grew within the United States as well. However, as the power disparity between the two sides widens, a policy that's focused on process is increasingly under strain. And this leaves Taiwan more susceptible to coercion and Beijing more emboldened to use military force. Indeed, the PRC is gradually and unceasingly pushing towards its own desired outcome for Taiwan. All the while, America's focus on process is drawing it towards China's objectives at the expense of its own values and strategic interests. Some American scholars and foreign policy makers have sounded the alarm about the need to accommodate China by reaching a new modus vivendi with Beijing, which will effectively abandon Taiwan. Yet, a debate over such a choice obscures a much-needed discussion about a Taiwan strategy that not only focuses on ensuring a peaceful process, but also for a vision for a desired outcome. As the two sides of the Taiwan Straits struggle to engage in dialogue, the scope of this process-based approach has barred U.S. policymakers from actively shaping conditions in the Strait that would be more conducive to long-term peace and stability. This outdated, partly flawed premise of the approach is based on the tendency in Washington to construct events in the Taiwan Strait in binary terms, independence or unification, which is also a false dilemma that Beijing has used to basically deter the United States from taking any active steps to more further deter Beijing's actions. On ensuring a peaceful process, the Taiwan Relations Act remains the legal document that governs relations between the United States and Taiwan, and sets out the primary goal, U.S. policy goals, towards cross-strait relations as ensuring that the resolution is not coercive, unilateral, or detrimental to U.S. interests. Towards that end, I believe the new president, President Trump, has a lot of tools and legal authority at his disposal to recalibrate Taiwan policy if he intends to do so. 5 provisions within the TROA are useful to highlight. 1. The future of Taiwan will be determined by peaceful means. 2. Consider any effort to determine the future of Taiwan by other than peaceful means, including by boycotts, embargoes, a threat to peace and security of the Western Pacific area, of great concern to the United States. Provide Taiwan with arms of defensive character. And perhaps even more importantly, and timely at this point, maintain the capacity of the United States to resist any resort to force or other forms of coercion that would jeopardize the security or the social or economic systems of the people of Taiwan. That provision, I think, is a key provision in ensuring U.S. commitment to Taiwan. One that would necessitate, if the right arguments are made in the right context would necessitate a strengthened economic partnership between the United States and Taiwan. Because this provision here includes both social and economic system in the security equation. The last provision is that the preservation and enhancement of the human rights of all the people on Taiwan are hereby reaffirmed as objectives of the United States. So, to conclude, despite all the uproar, President Trump, with his iconoclastic persona, has not changed U.S. policy. Rather, I believe that his administration has raised an important and fundamental question about the long-term viability of the current approach to policy. To be sure, the previous ambiguous approach has outlived its utility, and the effects have been an emboldened Beijing and a Taiwan that is now being gradually pushed into a corner. Although alternatives to a gradual change in policy presents equally destabilizing propositions, and there is a great deal of uncertainty that comes with any change. However, a fear of even thinking about change could lead to a state of paralysis that is equally disruptive. A one-sided focus on the process has left U.S. interests increasingly susceptible to Beijing's manipulation and its increasing leverages. Policy towards Taiwan has operated over the past 40 years on the premise that America's primary interest is in the process, as opposed to the outcome. It is time for U.S. policy makers to focus on the desired outcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to take questions.
Oh yeah, do you want to take questions? Or
I'm happy to take questions.
okay.
But just how many
should
times?
we? Yeah, I think we're very close to. Yeah, it's like 2:40, so maybe we'll take questions at the end.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I mean, that's more of the fun part, actually.
So our next speaker is Victor, and he's the president of the New Jersey chapter.
Thank you. I'm Victor. I'll introduce myself in a couple minutes.
I'm Carol. I'm from New Jersey South chapter. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. Thank you.
I'm Linda Ling. I'm from Pennsylvania. We have 5 people here.
I'm Feng Cheng Fan. My house is right about half mile away. I used to be president of FAPA, so I represent myself here. And there are others. You should introduce yourself. Where are you from?
My name is Len Wu. I'm from New Jersey, a city really close. I used to be a FAPA president as well, and I did in 1991, 1992. Nice to meet you guys.
I'm Oh Yang. I'm from Hudson. I'm the current Hudson chapter. We had a 6 member coming here to join today's meeting. Nice to meet everybody.
Stephanie, I'm the Massachusetts chapter president.
My name is Cecilia. I'm from Delaware chapter. We have 4 people here.
Hi, I'm Jadrim, coming from Boston as well. There's 5 of us total. I'm also the standing committee member of the Northeast region. So thank you all.
Volunteers. Henry.
Hi everyone, I'm Henry, part of the Pennsylvania chapter. Also on part of FAPA, one of the board members, and it's wonderful to be here and to make my family with me.
Amber, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm not in FAPA, but I'm part of the Rutgers Taiwanese American Student Association, and there's 2 other people here with me.
Jake, sir.
Hi everybody, my name is Victor Liu. I'm here from New Jersey. I'm the current New Jersey, Papa New Jersey chapter president. And being from New Jersey and being that this meeting is here in New Jersey, very convenient for me. So it should be my job to welcome everybody and thank you all for coming, particularly the people that came from farther away. Obviously the Boston people who always are road warriors who always travel quite well. And I heard that there's people from Delaware, and we really appreciate everyone that had to travel. I know it's cold. I know it's not convenient, but I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. I'm really happy to see the turnout here. Before I forget, Amber, do you want to announce your upcoming event? Amber was gracious enough. Her and the other 2 TASA members were gracious enough to join us, and they obviously do a lot for Taiwan. On the collegiate level, on the university level. So, do you want to speak a little bit about Bank Market? You want to use the mic?
Okay. Hi, so I'm Amber, and as said before, I'm part of Rutgers Taiwanese American Student Association. And every year in the spring, we host our biggest event, and it's called Night Market, where we basically recreate a night market on one street on one of our campuses, College Ave. And basically we have a lot of food, games, performances, prizes, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. We get over 1,000 people who go every year. And this year it's held on April 14th. It's on a Friday, and our rain date is April 16th. You can find, we're going to be posting more information on it on our Facebook page called Rutgers TASA, or TASA Rutgers, so once it comes up, you can find out more about it there. And we really hope that if you live close by, you can come, because it's a lot of fun and people really enjoy it. Thank you.
So, if anyone is nearby, like the Boston chapter, if you guys want to come down to Night Market, please April 14th, please come support our youngest Taiwanese community members. It's really important. Okay, I don't want to forget, thanks to June and Russell for making the trip up here, for speaking to us. It was very enlightening and really, really valuable information. So, okay, so that's it for thank yous. Now that June and Russell have really talked to us a lot about what's going on a broader scale, it's important for us to remember what our job is. FAPA is first and foremost a grassroots organization. What that means is we here as community members, not just Taiwanese American community members, but American community members, people that are part of our local communities, can play a role in supporting Taiwan, in ensuring Taiwan's security, in changing the policy, in putting pressure on our elected officials to revisit the U.S. Taiwan policy, to revisit the U.S. stance on cross-strait relations, and to support a lot of the organizations, a lot of the movements that are happening in Taiwan. So my talk today is more about what the tangible steps that we can take as individuals here in our local communities to support Taiwan. And the main topic right now, one of the projects of FAPA right now is the Taiwan Travel Act. It's very important for us to really apply pressure on our elected officials to try to gain support, to try to get support for this bill. Okay, I'm a little cut off here, but the Taiwan Travel Act, also known as HR 535, it was introduced by Steve Shabbat in January 2017. This is the second time he's introduced it. He already introduced it last year as well. But with a new Congress, it's a new bill that needed to be reintroduced. The original co-sponsors of HR 535 are Steve Shabbat, who's a Republican from Ohio, Ed Royce, who's a Republican from California, and Brad Sherman, a Democrat from California. And the main purpose of Taiwan Travel Act is to allow and encourage high-level diplomatic visits between the U.S. and Taiwan officials. To give you a little bit of framework of what the Taiwan Travel Act is in the eyes of Steve Shabbat, I have a little quote from him from when he introduced it. The controversy surrounding Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen's transit through Houston and San Francisco on her way to and from Central America highlights the need for a change in U.S. policy. I've always felt that restricting high-level visits by senior Taiwanese officials is both insulting and counterproductive. This is U.S. policy, our own self-imposed restrictions. I repeatedly said that this policy is nonsense and should be changed. I have also long believed that the administration should encourage direct dialogue with the democratically elected president of Taiwan. It is well known in international diplomacy that face-to-face meetings are an important component in ensuring a sustainable relationship. So as you can see, Steve Shabbat is a very, very strong supporter, and he says things that indicate that what we all feel, that cross-strait meetings or meetings between high-level officials of Taiwan and high-level officials of the United States, it's really a common sense thing that we have kind of the U.S. has kind of restricted itself from for fear of what China might say or do. But there is support among Congress to to make sure that we can kind of create our own policies towards this. So the Taiwan Travel Act has been introduced. Now what? Just to give you an idea of some things you may or may not know about the legislative process. 95% of introduced bills do not make it to the floor. So basically, you can introduce a bill, but the House of Representatives do not ever vote on 95% of those bills. 95% of bills passed by the relevant committee make it to the floor. So that part is important because if we can get the Taiwan Travel Act passed by the House Foreign Relations Committee, then there's a very, very good chance that it will someday be voted upon. So that's why it's so important for us to get as many co-sponsors as possible so that it can it can be part of the 5% that actually make it to the floor. Okay, that in itself is the greater battle. Okay. So officially, a piece of legislation needs 25 co-sponsors in order for it to be voted on by the House Foreign Affairs Committee. 10 of those 25 must be House Foreign Affairs Committee members. Okay? So as you may or may not know, each house has different committees. The committee that would govern that the Taiwan Travel Act pertains to is the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That's the committee that we really, really care about. So first, the bill will be introduced there, and if it passes the House Foreign Affairs Committee and gets, moves forward from there, then it gets voted on by the greater House. So our goal, and it's very simple, is to find 25 co-sponsors in the House so that it can get voted on in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. After that, we believe that hopefully it'll get through that, and then we can at least be voted upon in the greater House. Most importantly, we need 10 of those 25 members, co-sponsors, to be House Foreign Affairs Committee members. Okay, so those are the important numbers that we are trying to focus on. So even though FAPA is not a big organization, these numbers aren't very big numbers. They're not impossible. If we all do our job in each of our communities, I believe that we can get those 25 co-sponsors, and I do believe that we can get 10 from this committee to support us and to co-sponsor. Okay, so very, very, I know I'm kind of repeating myself a few times, but it's very, very important that you understand that our goal is for our local congressmen, our local representatives, to co-sponsor the Taiwan Travel Act. Okay. Alternatively, if the House leadership wants to bring the resolution to the floor, it doesn't need those 25 co-sponsors. Okay, so right now the House leadership, consists of Paul Ryan and all the majority whip, et cetera, et cetera. So if they support it, like last year, they supported the 6 assurances legislation, so we didn't need 25 co-sponsors. But none of the House leadership are in our region, so I'm not really going to talk about that. But yeah, it's not always necessary to get 25 co-sponsors, but our goal is to get 25 co-sponsors for this particular bill. Okay, the House Foreign Affairs Committee consists of 26 Republicans and 21 Democrats. As I mentioned, there were 3 original co-sponsors of the bill. They are all members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That's very important because that means out of those 10 that we need from that committee, we already have 3. So we only need 7 more. Okay? Okay, so what can we do as FAPA memberships? As FAPA membership. Number 1 is know who your congressman is. Who here knows who is their local congressman, the one that represents their district? Okay, some of you don't know, and that's okay. In fact, I don't think I knew last year. So it's a really easy website, house.gov/representatives/FAPA. And all you have to do is put in your zip code, and it'll tell you who that person is. Okay, so for those of you that don't know who your district representative is, do you guys want to take out your phones and try to find out right now? Who has iPads and cell phones and iPhones? I'll go through it with you. So just go to your web browser and just type in this URL. It's okay. They gave me an hour and 20 minutes to talk. No. So they gave me 1 hour to talk. So no, they gave me much less time to talk. But this is important. It's important for us to all know who our congressman is, so we can do our job to advocate for our policy. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Maybe take a picture of this so you guys can keep looking. And then if you have any questions, let me know, and then I'd be happy to help you. The next question is your congressman a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee? Okay, so we'll come back to this. Okay, so now that you will know who your congressman is, it's time to take action. Okay, there are some less effective methods and a little bit lower effort methods that we can do first. Number 1, social media. Okay, if you can post on each congressman has a Facebook page. You can post on it, but it's not going to do much good. Okay, but you can do that. That takes the least amount of time. It takes about 5 minutes less. but you know, it's probably not gonna do much. The second is to write a letter. It's more effective than social media because they have to actually open it, and they get fewer letters than they do tweets or Facebook posts. Okay, writing a letter to the district office is much better than writing a letter to DC. Simply put, they care about their constituents. They want to know. They care about listening to the people that elected them. They don't care about all the millions of people or thousands of people that probably write them angry letters to DC. Okay, so after you know who your congressman is, find their address, write them a letter. Okay, if you're interested, if you want to give me your email address, I will write the letter for you. And all you have to do is tell me who your congressman is, and I will send you a prepaid envelope and a written letter. All you have to do is sign it, put it in an envelope, and mail it. Okay? So I will pass along. I will pass out some a sign-up page, and then you just give me your address, and I'll mail you that letter, or I'll email you that letter. Whatever makes it easier for you. But writing a letter, and I will find the address, and you can just all you have to do is mail it. Okay? Next most effective is a phone call. A phone call is even more effective than writing a letter because somebody has to listen to you talk. Okay, so I can't do that for you. Okay, so you should make your own phone call, but I'll help you write the letter. The last one is mailing a petition. So we're going to be passing around a petition given by FAPA headquarters. Now, even though this is not a high efficacy thing, all you have to do is sign the letter. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring it back to DC. And after we bring it back to DC, Kuhn is going to bring that in person to that office. Now, I said mailing a petition is not very effective, but it's very effective if we bring a petition that's signed by a constituent to the actual member of Congress's office, and it says, hey, look, even one of your constituents, or 10 of your constituents, 5 of your constituents, they care about this issue. So that gives Kuhn from FAPA headquarters the ammunition, or at least the clout, so that they're going to listen to him a lot more closely when he speaks to them. Okay, these are things that work better. Number one is congressional visit. Okay, so I put a picture of a recent congressional visit we had with Donald Payne. I understand Dr. Tsai also had a visit with Congressman Payne. So we kind of hit him twice in a very short amount of time to double our efforts. Why a congressional visit is important is, number one, you build rapport with the congressman and his staff. Number two is that you let them know that you're a constituent and that their constituents care about this issue. And I don't know what the third one said. Once upon a time, they said something. You bring something. Oh, bring a petition. That's right. So if we have a petition, when Kuhn goes to visit the congressman, they can hand deliver the petition, and it has a lot more efficacy than than if you didn't have that. So it's very, very important that they actually get to meet with you face to face. Okay. The next thing is to attend a town hall meeting. Now, recently, this has been a big issue in the media because the Republican congressmen, they don't want to have town halls because everyone's angry. Well, this is especially in New Jersey. Everyone's angry about Trump being elected, etc. But town halls are very important because the congressman is there, and they are forced to answer you in front of everyone. Okay. So what I posted here, and I'll email again. If you're interested in this, give me your email. I'll email you the link, and it shows all the town halls that are scheduled in the near future. And what's important about that is you can go with a friend, and they'll always open it up to questions. You raise your hand and say, I heard that President Tsai Ing-wen had a lot of difficulty when she was traveling through the United States, and I heard that the high-level Taiwanese officials are not allowed to meet with high-level American officials. So I would like you to co-sponsor the Taiwan Travel Act. That will allow high-level visits between the U.S. and Taiwan, U.S. and Taiwan. They'll be forced to answer you, and they're not going to say, no, I don't want to support that. I think most members of Congress, they will say they are generally in support of that because it's common sense. Okay, so again, I'd be happy to email you this link so you can find out if your local congressman is having a town hall. I put be courteous here because right now there's a lot of angry people going to town halls. I think FAPA can be special in that, we're not angry, we're just looking for co-sponsors. So that's exactly, that's what you say, we're just looking for co-sponsors. Can you support, high-level business between, Taiwan, between officials in Taiwan and the United States? Oh, and be courteous because that'll be very refreshing to them right now. So if you're trying to find out about town halls, when you call, say, hey, are you having a town hall? Then you'll be the only nice person asking them that question. Okay. And the last thing that you can do is you can host an event and invite congressional staffers. I know GTI is doing a lot of this, but more importantly, if you want to have a local FAPA event in your local community and you want to invite the district staffers or you want to invite the congressman to your office, to your event, number one, it builds rapport with the congressional staff. Number two, show them, if you have a big event like this and we invite a congressman, it shows how many people care about this issue. And number three, it gives them an opportunity to get to know us. I think it's really difficult to add a human element in a 10-minute meeting with a congressman. But if if they sit through an hour meeting, or in this case a 4-hour meeting, and eat our food, it's difficult for them to not get to know what kind of people we are. Okay. So, anybody still working on finding out who their congressman is? No, everyone knows, right? Okay. So. Can we pass around the petitions? Okay. So we're going to pass around the petitions right now for headquarters. Please make sure to return them to June before you leave. Can I have one page? And then... So this page will be...
we shouldn't repeat, right?
Hmm? Yeah, we already did.
Okay. For those of you that did petition, don't do it again. But I think the headquarters will be able to sort through them if you already sent the petition to headquarters. So that they'll know who has already gotten the petition and who hasn't. So you can, if you repeat, it's not that end of the world. It'll be okay. But if you know you've already done it, then don't do it again. The next, okay, so number one, the petition. Number two is if your congressman is in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, we should really do whatever we can to go set up a congressional visit with them. Okay?
I prepared.
So again, if you haven't, now that you know who your congressman is, if you find out that they are part of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, please let us know that you'd be willing to help us to schedule an appointment with them. And if it's within reason, within an hour or so, I will do my best to help you schedule a meeting, and I will do my best to go with you to that meeting. Because we need as many co-sponsors as possible for the Taiwan Travel Act, particularly those from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Okay?
How to find out from Google?
I
have the name here, but I don't know how to get it.
Well, here. What's the name of
See, for instance, like Donald Penn.
Donald Payne is not part of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. In New Jersey, I know the Albio Series is.
He is.
Yeah, he is. Albio Series, I think it is. And Chris Smith is as well. Okay. That's. Yeah, but where do we get those now?
Not over here, but you can find it easily. Go to our website and find it. We in New Jersey, definitely.
Chris Smith and Series.
Chris Smith, and the other one, Newark. 你的你多公益什么呀
Donald Payne.
Donald Payne 不是，那另外一个。Series.
Series is Jersey City. Yeah, Hudson. Yeah, Hudson County. Yeah. Norcross is not.
About Lance. Mr. Lance. L-A-N-C.
Oh, Lance? No, Leonard Lance? No, he's not. I think New Jersey is just Series and Chris Smith. There's a number in Pennsylvania and a number in New York. I don't really know. Okay, the website for the House Foreign Affairs Committee is foreignaffairs.house.gov. Okay. If you want to give me again, do we have a sign up list with all everyone's emails? I can send like a follow up with all the links.
How about Thomas?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think Thomas has already worked very very hard from the upstate chapter. Upstate, is that what it's called?
Hudson.
The Hudson chapter has already started working very very hard in the town, getting support for. Yeah, I know.
New York, there's one in New York.
What district?
Engel. I think he's in Long Island. New York District 16.
Yeah, which one? Pennsylvania, New York,
Tom Marino, Pennsylvania.
It's okay. I'll send out an email with a list to follow up. Okay. So, can I get everyone's attention, please? Hello? 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 Hi. Sorry, still not over yet. I want to introduce Thomas Wang because the Hudson chapter has already gotten started. I know they've already done petitions. They've already worked really hard to get this bill, to support this bill. So he wanted to share a little bit of his strategies. But also, Sume, yeah, 1 minute.
I'm going to pass out this sheet of paper. For those who want to get information from Victor, please add your email here. Don't scribble. Make sure it's typed so that Victor can send you information on how to contact with Congress. Okay?
Yes.
I'll put it in the back.
Can you help me put my slide in my file here?
Thomas, you want the slide on?
I don't leave it. Yeah, because they have slide. How to use this? Up and down, which way?
Okay. Hello. My title here, I put is sharing experience in congressional office visit. Just now, Victor already ran down some of the important steps. So the experience that I'm talking about here is that we only talking about Mid-Hudson chapter. So we would like, might as well at this time introduce our Mid-Hudson chapter's attendants here. Would you please stand up? Hey. Okay, so we really have 7 people, not just only 5. But supposedly we should have many more sign up, but we forget. By the way, my name is Thomas Huang. And now let me see, how do I use this? Oh. Okay, I would like to discuss with you about the case, the sharing with the case, what we working on. We try to request the co-sponsorship of this HR 535. As you know, first, the time from headquarters, Kumbra sent out a urgent request, ask all us to start working. That was first sent out is January 17th. So we chapter start working together, do the preparation work. First, we need to collect all the petition letters. That's really, in fact, those we already signed. We have signed about 70 of them. And how we get all those signed petitions? First, we got, let's say, Winchester Taiwanese Church, and we would like thank to Ren Ji Huang and my colleague. He collected all 40 of them from Winchester Taiwanese Church. And then during the Lunar New Year time, we Mid-Hudson Taiwanese Association have Lunar New Year at the time, we collect another like close to 20 some page. And then the rest of them, while our chapter president, Ouyang, he doing his business work, he running around, like go to many places to ask them to sign. All those signed petition, not necessarily all from, many of them is from mainstream. And the signature we collect, in the meantime, we also make appointment, schedule meeting with the local staff of a congressional office. And January 25th, I visited that congressional office, passed like 16 of the petition letters to bring to the office. Let them bring their awareness what the issue is coming up, and ask the congressman, my congressman called Sean Maloney, ask him to co-sponsorship. And follow up after the visit, we keep on calling, make the many follow-up call, be realistic. Most of them, all the phone is reached only to the front desk. They do not really reach to the person you want to talk to. But it's okay, keep on calling. They will not be happy, but they have to answer you. So after a month, at February 25th, there's a town hall meeting. Just now, Victor mentioned about the town hall. The town hall meeting is very important. To my surprise, usually my congressman, really, we have been attending his town hall meeting so many times, especially Ouyang. When congressmen see us show up, he already knows what we come for, basically. And once when Ouyang raised his hand, tried to speak up, in fact, I feel my congressman is not really the so-called is cynical. He said, Taiwan issue, right? He already tell to all the audience that the Taiwan issue, right? This gentleman come for Taiwan issue. And then he smiled and say, okay, you can speak up. The attitude is really cynical, not necessarily very well, I would say friendly, but cynical. But this time, when I met my congressman at the end of the town hall meeting, to my surprise, he saw me and then he reached his both hands, shook my hand, says, I just met your ambassador yesterday afternoon in my office, talking over Taiwan issue. Well, I don't want to go through the detail of that. At least he realized that's issue. Taiwan, so I hope he will co-sponsor this. Besides, we do that, when he talking about ambassador, to me, it's very surprised. I don't know what he's talking about. And he even, no, ambassador, he thought I do not catch. But if due to time constraint, I will just skip. And if we have time, we come back to talk more about this encounter of about ambassador. Let me go through, basically review the SOPs, standard operation procedure. Just now, Victor already run down with you. First, you need to team up with your colleague, within your chapter. Why we need to team up? If you go yourself, that's it's okay. But if you have somebody go with you, it will be good. Usually, there's a lot of resolution we will propose. And second is that we need to do a lot of follow-up. After a while, you will get feel burned out. So if you have alternative of your people, you can go to, you have some relief, and then you will not, besides, you have a feel mutual support when you go to whatever is needed. Prepare the petition letter. The important point is when you prepare those petitions, typically Kun will prepare those templates for you. We can copy and then write down there. Important is your name and address. So when you visit the office, you hand it to the staff or to the congressman or your representative. They have know who will be the person they can contact you if they happen to want to contact you. Do the follow-up call just like I said, like Victor said, be courteous. But keep on calling, they don't like it too much. But after a while, they have to, so don't antagonize them. Do not miss the town hall, why I highlight in red. Town hall is a special meaning here. Typically, when you go to visit your Congress office, you only see the staff, you see the ad. You will not able to see the representative himself or herself. So this is the only time he will show up before you, or even he will show up in the town hall. But town hall meeting, at that time you can meet him in person. Typically, we are kind of shy to speak in public. Town hall meeting could be sometimes just only a few people, like maybe 10, 20. But oftentimes, like especially right now, last time I went to it's more than 200 because of Donald Trump's case. Everybody show up. So when it's come up like this, and everybody talking their own petition or their thought, you do not even understand what they are talking about. But be patient sitting there. Just a window of opportunity for you to speak to him. It's at the end. Window is very short, very brief. But that's use that. Because first, congressmen need to leave very quick. So most of the people also think that they already left. Only few people persistently line up to talk to him or her. Then wait for your time. You give him the petition you prepare, if you can at the time. If not, ask him to take a picture. Why I highlighted red, the trick is when you ask him for the take a picture, the congressman, if your owner, will not reject you. Also important is he will pause it. He will stop at that time. When you stand by close to the congressman, at that time you can just verbally say, please support this. You don't speak too much. You just spoke very short, brief. Say, please support or sponsor this. So this kind of trick, learned from the experience, not in purpose by book. So important is we need to do the key is the action. We need to do it. So same thing apply. We did this proclamation, and just three of them just now. I think June showed that one. 3 proclamation, and it's funny. All 3 is from Northeast region. My town, and Jackie's town, and Syracuse. importantly, it's published in Liberty Time, and that surprise published created in Liberty Time created to FAPA. So that's a good work we have done. Thank you. You have any question, please? Okay, that's February 28th is the Taiwan 和平日的哈，Taiwan Peace Day. All right. If you have more time, if allowed, I can talk about how I meet in that ambassador. Ambassador, who is the ambassador? Yeah. Okay. After you finish, and then if we time allow, we can talk about that.
Do you guys have any questions for any of the speakers that we had?
Russell?
Okay, you guys should probably.
Yeah, I want to congratulate all the staff and all the regional presidents for coming to this meeting and really present a beautiful forum, very informative and really exude a lot of energy into FAPA's goal. Specifically, I have a question for Russell. It is inevitable that Taiwan is going to have a legislation for plebiscite. And following that, if it allows the Taiwanese people to go ahead and to determine the fate of Taiwan, the choice is going to be a new constitution, a new name, and a de facto, or indeed a independent Taiwan. In your interpretation, would U.S. try to slow down the process for Taiwan to pass such a legislation? Secondly, if it's passed and voted upon, what would happen in your estimate?
That's a great question. I think that the question is about the plebiscite and the reaction on the part of the United States and the aftermath if it is passed. I think that the way I would approach this question in terms of how the U.S. response will be is that it depends, right? It depends on the circumstances. In my opinion, I don't think that the U.S. objects to a plebiscite in itself. That it is the right of free people to be able to determine, in principle, their future. However, the relationship, as I've hopefully outlined in my presentation, is that the U.S. policy towards Taiwan is complex. There are constraints, and that constraint is, for better or for worse, I'm not saying that it's right, but it is dependent upon the state of U.S.-Taiwan relations and also the state of U.S.-PRC relations. Now, there was a comment that was made at a recent event that I was at where the attention that U.S. policymakers pay towards Taiwan often has a relationship with the degree of tension between the United States and China. And so when tensions between US-China are higher, the flexibility in terms of how US policymakers view Taiwan also tends to, I'd say, the margins for action to become greater. Now, so again, that goes back to my response, and it's probably not a satisfying one in terms of having a clear answer to that, but it depends. And the second hypothetical, in terms of if it is passed, and what would the U.S. do? It's, you know, the United States is obligated under the Taiwan Relations Act to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself. That is a domestic law that the Congress is in charge of to hold the administration into account, and it won't be taken lightly, and so consequently, you know, in that hypothetical scenario, that should that plebiscite be passed and that happens, you know, it's I think in that scenario it's one in which, you know, Taiwan will be determining its future. And yeah, unfortunately I don't have a good clear answer for you on that. You know, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say in terms of what the United States will do. The strategy, again, goes back to one that has been long-standing. It is the strategic ambiguity. And there hasn't been any clarity on the part of a move towards greater clarity. The closest that we got to any a clear definition of U.S. commitment was in 2001, as you may recall, during the Bush administration, where he declared that the United States would do whatever it took to help Taiwan defend itself. Not that it will defend Taiwan, but that it will help Taiwan defend itself. And that is consistent with the provision of the TRA, right, the Taiwan Relations Act, where the United States is committed to provide weapons of defensive nature or character to Taiwan. And so that was the closest I think we got to a move towards greater clarity. But however, there hasn't been any move in terms of discarding that. However, that being said, I would add that there are calls for the need for greater clarity in U.S. commitment to Taiwan. But whether that commitment is also conditional, right? So for instance, in the summer of last year, there were two pretty senior think tankers, one Elbridge Colby and a former senior defense official, Walter Slocum, who wrote an article called The Need for Clarity on Taiwan. Basically, they made the argument that, you know, the strategic ambiguity is no longer useful, and that it actually has the effect, which I also agree with, of emboldening Beijing, because the lack of commitment on the part of the United States to commit to Taiwan's defense is in effect encouraging Beijing to take provocative actions against Taiwan, because they believe that, you know, that Taiwan will not be defended, and therefore they will be encouraged to use force to resolve this issue. Now, that commitment on the U.S. part, in their recommendation, is not unconditional, right? The United States, I believe, that if there are going to be calls from the United States to express greater clarity, there will be conditions to that, because there has to be a means to at least maintain some stability. So I think that even in that spectrum of, I believe, a strong support, it's an indication of a strong support for Taiwan, it is one that is not without limitations. And so we have to be mindful, I think it's important to be mindful of those constraints as we advocate for, as anyone advocates for certain measures that, you know, Taiwan takes. I mean, I'm not sure that that's a satisfactory answer, but that's my assessment of the environment, the policy environment that we're in. Clearly, there's also, you know, the other side of it, which is, you know, a greater call. I wouldn't call it a greater call, but back in 2011 timeframe, there was a growing chorus of people calling for the abandonment of Taiwan. You know, in order to appease China, to basically get China to cooperate with the United States on Iran, North Korea, and a host of all other issues. You know, or econ writing off the U.S. debt. I mean, just some really outlandish sort of proposals. I'm not saying that they're not, that their voices are no longer there. They're actually still there, but they're certainly not as loud as they were before. But I think that's that comes from a growing recognition that of Taiwan's value. But that's not to say that it won't return. So I'm just trying to I'll give you a sense of the lay of the land, at least in my observations. Am I sort of?
One follow-up. If currently there's a legislation proposal in the Lihuayuan, from DPP they were trying to limit what the plebiscite can be used for. In terms of when it comes to new constitutions, changing names of Taiwan, UN admission, so on and so on, it would require more stringent conditions, which is not acceptable to other parties. So it's quite likely it will pass in Lihuayuan. So once it's passed, it might be used. So in your dealing with the think tank in the United States, you would have to tell them this is a possibility. We elect a Taiwan president. So it's very likely this can pass. So what happens if it passes? You have to start to prepare them.
That's a. Thank you for that. I think it's that's important information to have, and if you can provide more information by email, perhaps to inform, to help us inform, be more informed about developments that are happening within Taiwan, that we can perhaps provide better explanations as to what circumstances that to prepare for, and understanding about what the situation is. Thank you.
I rise humbly to ask ourselves, those of us that we have been advocating Taiwan independent, I want to ask each one of you, what is more important, security, safety of Taiwan, or Taiwan independence? When the day comes, Taiwan independence will threaten our safety and security. What we gonna pick? Which choice we gonna pick? That's number one. And this morning, before I came here to join the meeting, I have an emergency surgery, and one of my anesthesiologist happened to be grandson of a Korean who was the president of United Nations. He is the third generation. And we are talking about the issue, a very serious issue happened yesterday in Korea, that the Korean has been removed from the presidency. The opposition party, Mr. Moon, and also the United Nations president, they are trying to run for president within 60 days. And he was telling me that this new president is going to push the THAAD, and we all know THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Anti-Missile Defense, that's going to be established in South Korea. And this new president is going to remove that. In another word, this most hopeful president, that his advocate is going to remove that. Although Trump already started building it, but they're going to remove it. So this poses a great issue to Taiwan, because I just want to play devil advocate. The only way Taiwan can survive is to, what should I say, to bring the China become democracy. Otherwise, I don't see any hope. I really don't see any hope.
Very difficult questions. You guys should be in Washington, asking questions of the think tanks, to other think tankers. I think the best answer I can give you, and it's probably not going to be a satisfactory one, though, is that, on your question of independence versus security, that's for the people of Taiwan to decide. I think it really depends on the people of Taiwan to decide on how much are they going to invest in their security to protect their independence. And I think that comes to, that question has to be answered in terms of investments that Taiwan is really willing to make in its own defense, and the willingness to demonstrate to Americans in the United States that in the event of PRC invasion, that Taiwan is willing to defend itself. And so I think that is a question that is best answered not by by the United States, or certainly not for China to decide, but for the people of Taiwan to decide that. On the question of, thank you, I wasn't expecting that. On the question of on THAAD and regional security issues, it does create it brings me back to a topic that I think is very important, which is Beijing's regional security strategy and its effort to basically undermine South Korea's politics in order to decrease support for a greater security relationship with the United States. And it's widely reported in terms of Beijing's interest in minimizing U.S. influence in the Asia-Pacific, because Beijing sees the Western Pacific as its sphere of influence. It sees also that THAAD is, although not directed at China, it's about North Korea, and that it sees this as a counter to its ability to utilize North Korea to basically threaten Japan, a security partner of the United States, and to also to further pressure the United States in a position to realign its forces. And this actually kind of creates a kind of interesting situation here, because particularly under this new president, President Trump, is because despite his rhetorics during the presidential campaign, where he criticized U.S. allies for not paying enough for their defenses, particularly in reference to NATO countries, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries. He has indicated, following his becoming president, that his presidency will still be very much security focused. He sent his Secretary of Defense to South Korea and Japan immediately to sort of reassure the defense partnerships with the region. And furthermore, I think that there is also broader indications that, particularly if you read into his tweets, right? For instance, in the aftermath of the phone call with President Tsai, he said, funny how that he should be criticized to talking with the president of a country that we sell billions in arms sales to, right? And so I think he thinks of this matter, I think, in a pretty common sense matter in terms of that we have a strong defense relationship. Why couldn't I talk to them? And that there are openings, particularly for Taiwan, under the security side of issues under this new president, because that will be the primary focus, I think, of his sort of continuation of the pivot strategy to the Asia Pacific. Yes.
Let me inject some number, because you talk about Trump tweet about selling weapons to Taiwan. One F-24 jet fighter costs about $70 million. US sell at least, let's say, 30 to Taiwan. Just think about the money, like how much money. All those jet fighter, F-24, $70 million a piece. Those jet fighters are all made by Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. Lockheed Martin alone has 200,000 employees. That means, right, a lot of family. So the military industrial complex of United States depend heavily on these transactions. It's economic issue too. So let's don't forget about that. But in addition, we talk about, right, the Taiwan security or independence. Taiwan issue does not stand alone. It has Japanese and Korean interests. So let's don't just consider Taiwan as selfish. Just think about Taiwan its own and depend heavily on the United States. No. It has a lot of mutual interests involved, including Japan and North Korea. Anyway, U.S. military actually decide more about Taiwan's policy than the executive branch.
I absolutely agree with your second point. I do think that that Taiwan stands beyond just cross-strait relations. We need to think beyond cross-strait relations, or when we consider Taiwan, particularly the credibility effects that abandoning Taiwan would have on U.S. credibility in the Asia Pacific. If Taiwan were allowed to fall into the PRC's control, that would cut off a strategic sea lane of communication in the East Pacific between the East China Sea and South China Sea. Taiwan's geography is a critical asset in terms of U.S. Patrol of the waters and the around China's periphery, and not to mention, of course, the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities that Taiwan possesses. So I can completely agree that we need to when we consider Taiwan's defense and security issues, it's not a one-way street, right? It's not just United States providing defensive, not providing weapons to Taiwan for Taiwan's defense, but Taiwan's defense is in it's in the interest of regional security, right? So so if I had in my comments where my observations implied that somehow that it's just one way, that's certainly not my intention, and I agree that it's Taiwan's defense is in U.S. interest, very much in U.S. interest too. Sorry. Oh, sorry. This is John.
我是蔡明芳，是法派纽约市永久会员吼。OK， 因为我咧做媒体，所以我较注意所有媒体的社论。为着即个萨德中国，有讲对美国甲韩国有一个威吓的名词，讲即爱韩国、美国负责任就对啦。但是呢，经过即届的动作了后，尤其是迄个总统落台以后，即个韩国发生暴动。暴动的原因是中国限韩令，将韩国所有的大公司拢叫因转去就对 ，OK。但是即个我看，即个媒体的社论安尼讲，我互大家做参考。我个人的意见是，今仔日法拍直接开即款会，法拍甲 GTI 应该定定世界即个重大的事件，你应该发表声明甲看法，互咱台湾人分享。OK。 即个外国人的社论安尼讲，讲第一，美国全世界啦，大部分对中国即款做法无意思、无效就对啦。安尼讲，因为中国甲韩国、美国，甚至甲台湾恐吓讲，台湾若说三道会日，就是台湾中国来解放台湾的事。 所以呢，国外有讲是安那，中国会讲即款口气，萨德是一个侦测甲防卫系统的物件。国外的媒体你claim中国，你伫南海迄个所在，你人造岛设立飞弹是真侪国家美国拢反对。 你甲全世界人讲，讲这是我的国土，我留下我的飞弹，这是我家己的权利甲自由。啊，所以讲是韩国即马伫因的国土，伫日本设立萨德，即嘛伊的权利，你咧共干涉啥？美国伊嘛足济啊吼，这是第一项。第二项就是限韩令、限台令，这是违反全世界部的条例。所以即马韩国咧告中国，讲伊安尼即款做法是一个毋对、违反国际法的代志。第三，媒体有你甲攻击，讲你即款即个作风无符合大国的风范，哦，所以全世界对即个。过来上尾一点就是讲，虽然韩国人即马咧反对即个暴动，但是过无偌久，大部分的韩国人是足屈强的，足为国家的，所以无偌久，因大家拢会赞成讲，因伫韩国设立即个萨德，袂像你头仔讲的讲，哦安尼就去落，哦，所以即点，互大家来分享来讨论，尤其是画拍甲即个 GTI， 应该深深去研究。互咱台湾人有一个较好的方向，多谢各位。
Okay, we're gonna take one more question. It's gotta be a question, not a. It's gotta be a question. Okay. I'm gonna take the one back there. Sorry, Thomas. You got to speak.
No, I do not have.
No, you spoke earlier.
No,
so
I do not.
There's people that didn't get to speak earlier.
I need to watch for you.
And let's make sure. I'm sorry. Let's make sure it's a question. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I want to give a totally fresh new idea to Papa community. Like, because we are the education advocate, and see if you agree or is it possible. That, you know, we are the advocates, so we can advocate to the world that one China, one Taiwan is the best policy for the East Asian peace and for the whole world. That, you know, we can do that because we are the education and idea thought organization. And we, in that, along with that, we should support the Chinese, like Cao Changqing, Chen Po Kong, those intellectuals. We should support and invite them to give speech and invite the American journalists or the scholars to attend, open to public. And also personally, lately, about a month ago, I myself experienced one thing. I have a daughter who lived in Washington. I have two daughters, one East End, the other West End. Now, East End is the Northeast. That's sort of a black and white Americans. And West End is all white, the safest. Now, the Northeast, I personally was threatened by it.
Sorry, we're running out of time, so if you have a question, could you please, because we're running out of time.
Okay, so I was threatened by black people when I was walking in the street in Northeast. She was saying that, oh, we can build, I never talked, I wasn't talking. She said, we can build a new wall, you know? And I thought she was talking to somebody else. But no, then she came near me and said, we can build a new wall, do you know? And I said, this is a crazy woman. I think a lot of Americans, they're confused. When they are against mainland China, Chinese, maybe they think I am mainland Chinese. You know what I mean? We have to consider our own safety. So this is not this is also part of my selfish idea that when Americans hate mainland Chinese so much, it's not to our Taiwanese Americans' advantage. So we have the responsibility to let the world know one China, one Taiwan is the best policy. But how? I don't know.
What is the question? We like to know your question.
My question is, would FAPA go along this line, like starting to give this kind of workshop, seminars, open to the world and open to 民运，64民运人士。
Definitely worth considering. All right, we have like just less than 10 minutes left.
I have a question.
All right, one question, one more question. One more question.
Russell, I feel
The question I have is, as we know, the Trump administration is right now is at the toddling stage. That means every move, they will trip or something like that. Could be some indication, like June, just now we're talking about Papa, the study, all those, what to watch out, what the GTI will rule in the similar study. Second is, if you got some conclusion, could you, how you want to post propaganda or make it let known?
Yeah, that's a great question, thank you. You know, I think in terms of you know, what GTI can do and is doing is that we have a publication called the Global Taiwan Brief. It's a weekly publication that we release, and we have close to about 900 subscribers now. And we have subscribers who include people on the Hill, people in government, and people who engage with. And the point is to try to engage these policymakers, keep them well informed about developments that are happening in Taiwan, Beijing's policy towards Taiwan. And so in the hopes that with such better informed environment, they will make better, you know, sort of decisions about the future of U.S. policy towards Taiwan. Secondly, we also organize regular events about Taiwan policy issues. So for instance, just the middle of February, we held a big event on President Trump's Taiwan policy. We invited former Ambassador Stephen Young, who was the AIT director to Taiwan, to give remarks there, and he made some interesting comments that, you know, got a lot of media attention regarding the basing of Marines at the AIT compound later this year. That got a lot of you know, support, I think, within the media. And the idea then is to keep Taiwan visible, right? And so that's what we're trying to do in our efforts in Washington in raising the visibility of Taiwan. As far as, you know, direct, you know, trying to keep, I think we want to keep, you know, again, the administration informed through our activities. So it's about, you know, analysis. Like I said earlier, you know, as an analyst, my role is here to, I want to describe, I want to explain as much as possible in terms of what the policies are, so that we can move towards a better policy, what it should be. And in terms of policy recommendations, I think that there will be great cooperation between, you know, other organizations and other think tanks, like-minded think tanks, that can make, you know, these type of recommendations that would be, you know, in support of Taiwan's democracy, in support of a stronger defense relationship, in support of a stronger economic relationship with Taiwan. And I think we're going to be moving towards that and encouraging the new administration to do so, because not only is it in Taiwan's interest, but it's also in the U.S. interest. So, we'll, you know, we'll continue to make those policy arguments in Washington to do so, and we'll be certainly happy to share, you know, our findings and our research and, you know, activities with, you know, members of FAPA and engage with FAPA, you know, on these matters. Did I answer address your concerns?
Mostly, but I also want, or that we talking about the micro point need to be watched out. Do you do any study on that?
The micro points, like, can you give me an example again?
For example, I think what are we talking about is something if indication of the policy change.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Absolutely. We certainly keep a very close eye in terms of what is statements that, you know, obviously, or tweets that President Trump makes. You know, those are a lot of strong indication. Only type of indication that we somehow get, you know, in indications of Trump's attitude, you know, towards you know, Taiwan issues. Statements made by his administration officials
of course, also as well. And I think June rightfully noted an important point, which is when Secretary of State, during his confirmation hearing, did reaffirm the 6 assurances. And that is, that in itself is a reassurance in terms of the continuity that the new administration, new government, the new Trump administration will make. However, there's a lot of uncertainty, as you are right. And when you describe the fact that it is, kind of on the edge, it certainly is. I mean, it's the National Security Council had a big overhaul as a result of General Flynn's resignation. But now there is another HR master who is very well respected by both Democrats and Republicans. That should inject some more stability in the transition process. The truth is that half of many of the cabinet positions are still unfilled, and so for us to have better indications of where the policies are going, how the policy is going to be implemented, and what type of direction they might take, we need to see more before we can actually make those such assessments. But rest assured that we will certainly be paying attention to this matter and carefully monitoring that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russell, Victor, June. Could we all take a quick picture? Probably up here. Yeah. Let's do it real quick.
And after the picture, if everyone can help with the chairs, they have to be stacked over here. So after the picture, don't leave. Please help with the chairs. Okay.
Also, the Massachusetts chapter is selling magnets in the back, so get one on your way out, $5.